The Middle East has entered a new phase of escalation, following a massive coordinated military operation carried out by the United States and Israel against targets in Iran. According to information emerging from the first hours of the confrontation, the operation began with an unprecedented preemptive strike that reshaped the security situation across the region and immediately triggered a large-scale retaliatory missile campaign. The strike marked one of the most extensive joint air operations conducted in the region in recent years. Military sources indicate that the United States carried out nearly 900 airstrikes within the first 12 hours of the offensive. The attacks were conducted using a combination of stealth fighter aircraft and long-range strategic bombers, including B-2 Spirit bombers capable of penetrating heavily defended airspace. During the operation, aircraft deployed large 2,000-pound bunker-penetrating bombs designed to destroy hardened military facilities. Targets reportedly included air defense radar systems, ballistic missile launch sites, and key elements of Iran's military infrastructure. One of the defining characteristics of the strike was its timing and execution. Instead of relying on traditional nighttime operations commonly used in modern air campaigns, the coalition launched its assault during the daytime. The operation began on a Saturday morning, a decision that military analysts say was intended to maximize tactical surprise. The timing coincided with intelligence indicating that senior Iranian leadership figures were gathered at a secure facility. The central objective of the operation was a compound where Iran's top leadership and commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were reportedly meeting. The attack on the site resulted in the destruction of the facility. According to the information circulating in the immediate aftermath of the strike, the operation eliminated Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, along with more than 40 senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The sudden loss of leadership figures dealt a severe blow to the command structure of Iran's security apparatus. The elimination of key figures at the center of Iran's leadership created an immediate and destabilizing vacuum within the country's military command network. Analysts described the strike as a decapitation operation aimed at dismantling the regime's ability to coordinate its response. The attack instantly shifted the dynamics of the confrontation and set off a chain reaction that quickly expanded beyond the borders of Iran. Within hours of the strike, surviving elements of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps initiated a large-scale retaliatory campaign. Iranian forces launched waves of ballistic missiles and explosive drones toward Israel. Air raid sirens sounded across major Israeli cities as defensive systems were activated to intercept incoming projectiles. Authorities reported that millions of civilians were instructed to move into bomb shelters as missiles and drones approached population centers. The retaliation targeted several areas across Israel, including major urban centers such as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The attacks marked one of the most extensive missile barrages directed at Israel in recent years. Defense systems were immediately mobilized to counter the incoming threats, while emergency services across the country prepared for potential impacts. However, the retaliation did not stop at Israeli territory. In a significant escalation, Iranian forces also launched missiles toward locations hosting United States military installations in the Persian Gulf. According to early reports, targets included the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, a large American airbase in Qatar, and additional military outposts located in the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. The expansion of the strike zone signaled that the confrontation was no longer limited to a bilateral conflict, but had the potential to draw in multiple countries across the region. The barrage transformed the airspace across the Middle East into an active combat zone. Hundreds of missiles and drones were launched across vast distances, creating an intense challenge for air defense networks operated by Israel and the United States. Regional governments began monitoring the situation closely as the possibility of a wider regional conflict increased. As the retaliatory strikes intensified, pressure mounted on the combined missile defense systems deployed by Israel and supported by the United States. These systems represent some of the most advanced air defense technologies currently in operation. Israel relies on a multi-layered defensive network that includes the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow interceptor systems. These platforms are designed to intercept different types of threats, ranging from short-range rockets to long-range ballistic missiles. Additional support was provided by United States naval forces operating in the region. Warships equipped with the Aegis combat system were positioned offshore, contributing radar coverage and missile interception capabilities. Together, these systems formed a complex defensive shield intended to protect Israeli territory and nearby strategic assets from incoming attacks. Despite the technological sophistication of these defenses, the sheer scale of the missile and drone barrage created a severe operational challenge. Defense operators were forced to track and intercept large numbers of projectiles simultaneously. The volume of incoming threats pushed interception systems to their limits and highlighted the growing difficulty of defending against coordinated missile swarm tactics. While most of the incoming threats were intercepted before reaching their targets, the unfolding events signaled that the confrontation between Iran, Israel, and the United States had entered a dangerous and unpredictable phase. The exchange of strikes demonstrated both the offensive capabilities of the forces involved and the immense pressure placed on defensive systems across the region. With military operations continuing and retaliatory actions already underway, governments across the Middle East and beyond began assessing the potential consequences of the rapidly escalating confrontation. Analysts warn that the situation could evolve into a broader regional conflict if further escalation occurs in the coming days. In the hours following the initial strike and the first waves of retaliation, the confrontation rapidly escalated into a large-scale missile and drone exchange that placed Israel's air defense infrastructure under unprecedented operational pressure. Iranian forces adopted what military analysts describe as a saturation strategy, launching large numbers of ballistic missiles and explosive drones simultaneously in an effort to overwhelm radar tracking networks and interceptor systems. The tactic aimed to exploit the limits of even the most advanced missile defense architecture. Israel's defensive system is widely considered one of the most sophisticated in the world. The country operates a layered shield designed to counter threats at multiple ranges and altitudes. The Iron Dome system is responsible for intercepting short-range rockets and artillery. David's Sling is designed to engage medium-range missiles and cruise missiles, while the Arrow system focuses on intercepting long-range ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. These systems are supported by early warning radars and command networks that coordinate interception decisions in real time. Additional defensive capabilities were provided by United States forces deployed in the region. Naval vessels equipped with the Aegis combat system operated offshore, contributing long-range radar coverage and interceptor missiles capable of engaging ballistic threats during various phases of flight. The combined network formed a multi-layered defensive shield, intended to protect Israeli territory, as well as strategic military assets in the surrounding region. However, the scale of the incoming attack presented a severe operational challenge. Hundreds of missiles and drones were launched across hundreds of miles, forcing defensive operators to manage simultaneous interception attempts across multiple trajectories. Military analysts note that the mathematical volume of incoming projectiles can place even advanced systems under extreme strain, as interceptors must be carefully allocated to ensure the most dangerous threats are neutralized first. According to preliminary reports from Israeli authorities, the majority of incoming missiles and drones were successfully intercepted before reaching their intended targets. Explosions were observed in the sky as interception missiles struck incoming threats. Nevertheless, the defensive network was not entirely impenetrable. A small number of ballistic missiles managed to bypass the shield and reach populated areas. One of the most serious incidents occurred west of Jerusalem in the suburb of Beit Shemesh. Local officials reported that a ballistic missile struck a residential area, destroying several homes and a nearby shelter. Emergency services confirmed that at least 9 people were killed in the strike, including children. Nearly 50 others were reported injured, many with severe wounds. Rescue crews continued to search through rubble for survivors, while medical teams transported the injured to hospitals. The incident highlighted the destructive potential of the weapons used in the attack. At the center of Iran's missile arsenal involved in the strike is the domestically produced K-bar missile, also referred to as the Khorram-Shar 4. This medium-range ballistic missile is capable of traveling more than 1,240 miles, giving it the range to strike targets across Israel and much of the Middle East. Military specialists point to the missile's heavy payload as a major factor in its destructive power. The K-bar can carry a warhead weighing between 3,300 and 4,000 pounds. Such a payload significantly increases the potential damage if the missile reaches its target. The missile also travels at extremely high speeds, reportedly reaching hypersonic velocity of around Mach 16 during parts of its trajectory outside the atmosphere. Another challenge for defensive systems lies in the missile's maneuverable re-entry vehicle. As the missile descends toward its target, it can adjust its flight path, making interception more difficult. The system is also believed to incorporate electronic countermeasures designed to disrupt radar tracking and confuse interceptor guidance systems. These technological features are intended specifically to defeat layered missile defense networks such as those deployed by Israel. During the Barrage, Iranian state media reported that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched a strike directed at high-value political and military targets. Among the claimed targets were the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a command center associated with the Israeli Air Force. According to Iranian reports, the attack was intended as a precise operation aimed at a heavily fortified government compound in Tel Aviv. However, the situation surrounding these claims remains disputed. Israeli officials have not confirmed any structural damage to the Prime Minister's office or other government facilities connected to the reported strike. Authorities in Israel have refrained from providing detailed information about potential impacts on sensitive sites, maintaining strict control over operational data during the ongoing confrontation. Iranian media quickly declared that the status of Prime Minister Netanyahu was unknown following the alleged strike. Israeli authorities have not addressed those claims publicly. Analysts note that official silence can sometimes be used as a strategic communication approach during active military operations, allowing governments to avoid amplifying adversary narratives or revealing sensitive information. While attention focused on the missile exchange over Israel, the wider retaliatory campaign launched by Iran extended beyond Israeli territory. Missiles were also fired towards several countries hosting United States military facilities across the Persian Gulf. The strikes targeted areas in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, where American forces maintain strategic bases. These attacks marked a significant expansion of the conflict's geographic scope. By targeting installations connected to the United States, Iran transformed the confrontation from a direct exchange with Israel into a broader regional crisis involving multiple countries and military alliances. Governments across the Gulf region placed their armed forces on heightened alert as air defense systems were activated to intercept incoming threats. The expanding battlefield created growing concern among international observers that the confrontation could escalate into a wider regional war. As missile exchanges continued and defensive systems remained under constant pressure, diplomatic channels and military command structures across several nations began preparing for the possibility of prolonged hostilities. As the missile exchanges intensified and the conflict expanded beyond Israel and Iran, the geopolitical consequences of the confrontation began to reverberate across the wider international system. The decision by Iranian forces to strike locations hosting United States military infrastructure in the Persian Gulf dramatically widened the scope of the crisis. Missiles were launched toward strategic facilities in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, all countries that host American military bases and play a central role in regional security arrangements. Among the facilities reportedly targeted was the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. The base serves as a key command center for naval operations across the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and surrounding waters. Additional strikes were directed toward a major American airbase in Qatar, as well as military installations located in Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates. These bases host aircraft, logistics hubs, and command facilities that support United States military operations throughout the region. The expansion of Iranian strikes toward these locations marked a critical escalation in the confrontation. By targeting sites connected to the United States military presence, the retaliation effectively broadened the conflict from a direct confrontation with Israel into a regional security crisis with global implications. Military and diplomatic observers warned that continued attacks on United States facilities could further deepen Washington's direct involvement in the conflict. At the same time, the political response from major international actors began to take shape. The escalation quickly drew attention from governments around the world, including China. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi held a high-level telephone conversation with Iran's Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi. During the call, China expressed support for what it described as Iran's right to defend its sovereignty, security, national dignity, and territorial integrity. Beijing also strongly criticized the initial United States and Israeli air campaign against Iran. Chinese officials characterized the offensive as an act of aggression and stated that the operation violated the principles of the United Nations Charter. China called for an immediate ceasefire and urged all parties to avoid further escalation that could destabilize the broader region. At the same time, China attempted to distance itself from speculation about deeper military involvement. Reports had circulated suggesting the possibility of a deal that would provide Iran with advanced CM-302 hypersonic anti-ship missiles. Chinese authorities publicly denied those claims, stating that no such agreement had been reached. Analysts note that Beijing appears to be balancing its diplomatic support for Iran with efforts to avoid becoming directly entangled in the conflict. While diplomatic reactions unfolded, military rhetoric from Tehran indicated that further escalation could follow. Surviving commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps publicly declared that they intended to launch what they described as the most intense offensive operation in history. According to statements reported by Iranian media, the objective of these planned operations would be to avenge the death of the country's supreme leader and senior military officials killed in the initial strike. These declarations suggested that the missile and drone attacks seen during the first phase of retaliation might represent only the beginning of a prolonged confrontation. Iranian commanders emphasized that additional operations could target both Israeli territory and United States military positions in the region. At the same time, statements from Washington and Jerusalem indicated that their strategic objectives had expanded beyond limited military strikes. According to officials cited in the context of the unfolding conflict, the United States and Israel are no longer focusing solely on degrading Iran's military capabilities. Instead, their long-term objective is described as the complete overthrow of the current Iranian regime. This shift in declared objectives significantly raises the stakes of the confrontation. Analysts warn that a campaign aimed at regime change would likely require sustained military pressure and could trigger further retaliation from Iran and allied forces across the region. Such a scenario would increase the likelihood of prolonged instability across the Middle East. The central battlefield in the weeks ahead is expected to remain the ongoing contest between Iranian missile forces and the layered air defense systems operated by Israel and supported by the United States. Each side is relying on different strategic advantages. Iran continues to deploy large numbers of ballistic missiles and drones designed to saturate defensive systems, while Israel and its allies depend on advanced interception technologies and early warning networks. Military experts emphasize that the outcome of this technological and strategic contest could shape the trajectory of the conflict. The ability of defensive systems to continue intercepting large numbers of incoming projectiles will play a critical role in limiting civilian casualties and protecting strategic infrastructure. At the same time, sustained missile barrages could gradually strain interception resources if the volume of attacks remains high. Governments across the Middle East are closely monitoring the situation as the confrontation continues to unfold. Several countries hosting United States military installations have already activated air defense systems and heightened security around strategic facilities. Regional leaders have expressed concern that continued escalation could pull additional states into direct involvement. International diplomatic efforts are also beginning to intensify as global powers seek to prevent the crisis from spiraling into a wider regional war. Calls for restraint and negotiations have been issued by several governments and international organizations, although no formal ceasefire framework has yet been announced. As the confrontation between Iran, Israel, and the United States enters an uncertain phase, the combination of military operations, political declarations, and diplomatic maneuvering continues to shape a rapidly evolving situation. Analysts warn that the coming weeks will be decisive in determining whether the crisis stabilizes or escalates into a broader conflict that could transform the security landscape of the Middle East.